And all right. My bigger writing were the main things of these, and then the dots and the voting. People had 4 hours after I said I never thought about it. So, yeah, that's. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
That's my.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, got it. Oh, okay. Understood. Hey, how are Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the chair of Cheryl? It's like, oh, you, I get to see you and Diana, you both like color morning.
I know.
She's gonna say, I have to go kill. So she, there's on the door.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So I remember that.
Just follow each other around.
I was like, when was the last time Cheryl, Eric and Matt were together? I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
PTSD. Oh, that's true too. I was thinking more of the official, you know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not over yet.
How are you? Yes, I just lost one. We're a big party process. We're changing like our. Yeah, like, okay. Yeah, it's all right, yeah, it's all funny. She was pretty hectic, so it's all right.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Oh, that's fine. We can run it through that. Yeah. Okay.
It seemed to stay focused.
All right, Chris, yes. Do I have one form? 9 is form, right? 10. Yeah, okay.
For some reason.
Good afternoon. We have forum, so I'm going to open the meeting, call the meeting to order. And I will ask Carlo if you can come up and give us your instructions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ricardo Garcia, the interpreter for today's meeting, along with Gladys Ramos. Instructions to access the interpreter via Zoom on your computer. After the host activist language interpretation mode, click the interpretation icon and select the language that you would like to hear. English and Spanish interpretation is available. Optional. To only hear the interpreted language, click View Original Audio via phone or tablet. In Community Controls, tap More at the bottom right in the mobile phone app, and top right in the tablet app after the host activist language interpretation mode. Select language interpretation and click the language that you would like to hear. English and Spanish interpretation is available. If the icon is not visible, tap the screen to make it appear. Reminder, speak slowly, between sentences, speak clearly, avoid interrupting with multiple people speaking, avoid using metaphor, acronyms, slang, or idioms. Interpret signals during the meeting, speak slower, raise your voice, interrupt for clarification, or communicate a concern. Acceso a intérprete a través de Zoom o computadora. Después de que el anfitrión active el modo de interpretación del lenguaje, haga clic en el símbolo de interpretación y seleccione el idioma que desea escuchar. Interpretación en inglés y en español están disponibles. Opcional. Para solo escuchar el idioma interpretado, haga clic en omitir audio original. A través del teléfono o tableta, en los controles de la reunión oprima la opción más después de que el anfitrión active el modo de interpretación del lenguaje. Esta opción estará localizada en la parte inferior a la derecha de la aplicación en su teléfono y la parte superior derecha de la aplicación en su tableta. Una vez ahí, seleccione interpretación del lenguaje y elige el idioma que desea escuchar. Interpretación en inglés y en español están disponibles. Si el símbolo no está visible, toque la pantalla para que aparezca. Recordatorio, hable despacio, pausa entre oraciones, hable con claridad, evite interrumpir o hablar varias personas entre sí, evite usar metáforas, siglas, doble sentido o modismo. Señales del intérprete durante la junta, hable despacio, alce la voz, interrumpir para clarificación o para comunicar un problema. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much. We have a full house today, so that's really nice. We're running out of room, I'm sorry. We'll work it out. Okay. All right, next, introductions and roll call, we always do them together. So, I believe I'll start with Chris. That's okay with you, just, all you do is give your name and, district that you represent.
Chris Rich and representing District 2, I'm recollecting hopefully correctly.
Represent everyone that's education.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Hello, Madeleine Torres, District 5. Hi, Dalia Rockkin, District 4. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chris Dyer, Ventura County Sheriff's Office representing law enforcement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Levere representing the Board of Supervisors.
Good afternoon, Michael Rodriguez, District 5.
John Stenzel, representing District 1. Roger Bobber, also from District 1 and Second Vice Chair.
Bobby Garcia, District 3.
And your second.
And Secretary.
Rebecca Gregorian, District 4.
Daniel Bednar, District 4.
Diane McKay, District 2, and First Vice Chair.
Cheryl Heitman, District 1 Chair.
Good afternoon, Loretta Denning, Behavioral Health Director.
And Mark Knudsen, Office of the County Council.
Thank you, and we have a quorum. Let's move on. Approval of the agenda, and I do have one addition under new business, to add orientation of new members. That's not, I got left off, so just add that to your agenda. Great. Any other additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'm going to bring with the agenda.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so I moved in second, and unfortunately, this has to also be roll call. Sylvia? Oh, I'm sorry, wait, hold on, so just a second, Michael?
I have a question.
Okay,
I understand we can move things around within the agenda, but are we complying with the government code? Especially the Brown Act, if we add items to the agenda, and I have to defer to council. If that's the case, I just want to make sure we're okay, like otherwise I have no issue about it, but I just want to make sure
we all approve it. Is there any reason we?
for providing notice.
No, Michael is correct that generally you would not add an item, especially an action item. I don't know, Chair Reed is intending to discuss the topic and give some information or solicit some feedback for next month.
I could do that, I could do it under my own director's report, it just was left off, it was on the original agenda, it just got left off, but that doesn't count, I guess.
No, not unless there's an emergency.
Okay,
There are special voting provisions for emergencies.
okay, all right. So we could add it, we just can't use it as an action item. Is that what you're saying?
You could talk a little bit about the topic if you wish, but you can't take any action.
Okay, well, I can just do it under my director. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, skip that agenda item addition, we'll just go back to the regular agenda as it was presented. Are you okay with that? You made
Yeah.
the motion?
I made the motion.
And Andre second, you're okay with that? Okay, it's moved and seconded. Now Sylvia, roll call.
Daniel Bednar,
Yes.
Andre Bobro,
Yes.
Nancy Porter's not here.
Correct, I'm sorry.
Jeffrey Allen Davis, Chris Dyer,
Yes.
Genevieve Flores-Caro,
She's coming, I think she's like.
myself, yes. Ravika Gregorian,
Yes.
Chris Ridge,
Yes.
Supervisor Matt Lavere,
Yes.
Diane McKay,
Yes.
Ron Sensel,
Yes.
Dolly Robkin. Yes. Michael Rodriguez,
Yes.
Marlene Torres,
Yes.
and Cheryl Hartman.
Yes, that motion passes, thank you. Moving to approval of the September 15th minutes. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Any hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Thank you, it's been moved and seconded. Sorry, Sylvia, but up for you again.
Danielle Bednar,
Yes.
Andre Bobro,
Yes.
Chris Dyer,
Yes.
myself, yes. Ravika Gregorian,
Yes.
Chris Ridge,
Yes.
Supervisor Lavere,
Yes.
Diane McKay,
Yes.
John Stencil,
Yes.
Dolly Robkin. Yes. Michael Rodriguez,
Yes.
Marlene Torres,
Yes.
and Cheryl Hartman.
Yes, that motion passes, thank you. Okay, public comments. I think we do have a couple, at least one public comment, otherwise. Do you? What is, I'm sorry, maybe your first time, you want to step forward? Thank you.
Good afternoon. There we go. Good afternoon, members of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board. My name is Brian Schumacher, and I am Advocacy and Community Impact Manager for Autism Society of Ventura County. I'm speaking today on behalf of our dedicated advocacy committee, who each week take time to review agendas of local city councils and school boards to ensure that individuals with disabilities are represented on issues that affect their lives. One of the most common questions Autism Society Ventura County hears from the individuals and families that we serve is, how will the budget cuts impact my services and my life? It's difficult to answer such an important question with, we don't know yet. We commend the board for its dedicated efforts in understanding how the upcoming budget cuts and policy changes will impact VCBH patients and our community at large. It would be great to be able to share the insights you have provided in this presentation with the greater community. As you know, the data can be difficult to navigate and understand. We're hoping that VCBH and the County of Ventura can create one-page summaries of this information. These summaries would ensure that the information is accessible, clear, and actionable for the communities we serve, enabling us to amplify its reach and foster meaningful engagement. We understand that the situation is in flux and changing often. We believe that sharing this data can help ease the anxiety of when and if the services they depend on may be cut. We will share today's presentation directly with our entire ASBC Advocacy Committee and our Board of Directors to empower them to continue to bring facts to this emotional and sometimes scary reality. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to improving behavioral health access and services in Ventura County. Autism Society of Ventura County looks forward to continuing to partner with you in this important work. If you would like more information on our advocacy efforts or to learn how we can deepen our partnership in the future, please contact me at advocacy@autismventura.org. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any other public comments? Anyone in the audience? And I don't see any up on the Zoom, I don't think. Did you get anything? No? Okay. Okay, moving along, on chair announcements. I will just say that, what I was going to add to the agenda. Is something I think we have spoken briefly about before, but, the executive committee is recommending that we, in terms of orienting new members, we each have one person from each district, each supervisor district to be the orienter for anyone else who's appointed from that district. And although that would be an official, I guess, ad hoc committee, it's not really a committee, it's just an appointment. So I think I would bring it back next week, or I'm sorry, next month for a vote, even though technically I'm not sure I have to, because I can just probably appoint people, but I'd like you to be thinking about it, and if you're in your district and you think this is something you can do, that'd be great. It's really just a matter of meeting with the new person who's appointed from your district and just kind of talking a little bit about what we do, what our role is, looking through the book, the book that we should all have by now, that gives us all the information we need from the state, and just answering any questions and just making that relationship so that when the new person comes, they at least know somebody here that they can talk to and smile at and say hello. So it's just a good way for us all to get to know each other better and to be a part of the sport, which is so important. So we will bring it back next month for a vote. And also, just let me mention, this will come up a little bit later, but just to bring your attention to this, we do have these different forms. There's sort of two different varieties of these forms, which is for site visits. We are going to talk about site visits later, but I just want you to be aware that you have these forms, because at some point you're going to be asked to give your information, sort of give your input more on what you'd like to see on the form, and if this is one of the ones that you would like to use when you go on site visits, but we will get to that later in the meeting, but just so you know, you have those. Okay, director's report, Dr. Jennering.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. In your report or in your packet is the director's report, and I will just call out a couple of items. One, I wanted to make a note for Proposition 1 update that we have completed all of the town halls as part of the committee planning process. As a reminder, we launched first one September 15th during this meeting. You all were the first group to hear the presentation from Health Management Association, HMA, who are consultants leading the community planning process. Since then, we've had a total of 5 throughout the county, 3 in person and 2 virtual. They were very well attended, and so we are very much looking forward to getting the feedback from the surveys and from the key informant interviews and from all of the information collected during the in-person sessions. As a reminder, this is a critical step as part of the integrated plan. This is something that we've always had to do as part of MHSA, but it has been expanded as part of the BHSA to where the stakeholder process includes not only just our regular partners that we normally work with, but a very specific list of over 30 stakeholders that we were required to engage with for this process. Alongside Public Health Department and Gold Coast Health Plan, our Medi-Cal managed care plan. So we've worked really closely with these groups, primarily through the, you'll see the second bullet under Prop 1, the Community Health Improvement Strategy Planning process. We were able to leverage some existing work that we have been doing in the county with public health and others to really integrate this process. So more to come. That information will be included in the integrated plan that will come back will come to this board as part of that review process, as well as the board of supervisors when it's ready. So the process again is very different under BHSA, whereas we have to have a planning budget and a plan, and it goes up to the state in draft form. Once it's approved by myself and our CEO, Dr. Johnson, and then it'll come back here, and then it'll go to the board. It's a whole different process, which we will walk you all through later on this year or early next year as well. Simply because there are very drastic changes from MHSA to BHSA as far as the approval. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to cover is you'll see there's a packet related to HR 1. We have been talking about some of the federal changes that will be coming and some of the state changes as far as Medi-Cal as the benefit. As a reminder, we are the specialty Medi-Cal plan for behavioral health services. So our primary population that focus are the Medi-Cal population. So obviously, the changes happening at HR 1 are going to have a significant impact on the entire healthcare system, including behavioral health. It is a very in-depth packet. It was provided by a slide deck. It was provided by the Health and Human Services Agency at the state level. So that is the agency that oversees Department of Healthcare Services, DHCS, that's the department that oversees us, as well as California Department of Social Services. They are the department that oversees like our Human Services Agency here, who oversees Medi-Cal locally, enrollment, and some other folks. And so it's a pretty comprehensive deck. It was from July that they finally got released to the public. We are constantly monitoring the situation. We're working internally, myself and some leaders throughout our agency and Human Services Agency and Gold Coast Health Plan have already started internal discussions as far as the impact that we will see locally. And then a series of little kind of offshoot work groups. So as that information starts to trickle down and we start to complete our local analyses, information will be coming out and will be specific to our county as far as projections and things that we are going to have to make assumptions on enrollment and processes. In the meantime, I would encourage you to go to the Department of Healthcare Services website, where they have a very clear kind of step-by-step what's going to happen based on timelines and high level as far as enrollment requirements, redetermination requirements, work requirements, and as far as like the general policies and how they'll be laid out across the state. Again, we're looking at what provisions for exemptions may or may not exist specifically for behavioral health clients and patients. The way the law reads, there are some call outs for exceptions when it comes to work requirements, but we don't know how they'll be applied. So for an example, it says if someone is in a qualified behavioral health treatment setting, they may be exempt from a work requirement. We don't know what that means as far as level of care. Does that mean a residential facility, an inpatient facility? Does that include outpatient services? We do not know. So as more information starts to come out, or the state starts to define things, we will most definitely be bringing that to your attention. But for now, DHCS and CDSS have the most kind of updated and broad information that you can kind of trickle down and navigate. So, yes.
There's also residency requirements.
Correct. So there's two different things in play, and we talked a little bit. There are the California specific rules that are changing with what the state is calling unsatisfactory immigration status, or UIS. That is a residency requirement and a potential copay requirement based on someone's ability to pay. That is separate from what is happening in HR 1, which is federal level changes in addition to what California is doing. So with all of these things, plus the changes due to CalAID and the shifts with Prop 1, we anticipate eventually there will be an impact specifically on behavioral health. Just simply the enrollment and re-enrollment requirements and the 6-month timeframes are going to be challenging for anyone, especially a behavioral health population. So those are the things that we're looking at, and the timelines for when all these hit are included in the packet. Most of them will take effect around 28. So 27, 28. There are some provisions that actually have started. There are more that will start next year, 26. We anticipate the greatest impact to our system probably around 2028.
Any other questions for Dr. Dennery? Sylvia?
I know we just went from one system to the new system, as far as, is it the Medi-Cal or the internal system that BCBH was using?
The,
Star from the new system,
so Kelly.
yeah, and then that sort of kind of adjusted your numbers, and now we're gonna be seeing more adjustment to numbers. As far as enrollment and who is in what. What do you suggest as for the board, like what we would be looking at when we're looking at goals, how to kind of see what the gaps are in services, because it's gonna be hard when they're gonna switch.
Yeah, that's gonna be the challenge. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're really, it's comparing apples to oranges at this point. The system has changed, just the behavioral health transformation piece has changed our system so significantly, and that the mild to moderate are being seen in a system, moderate to severe in our system, and commercial is a whole separate system. And really, the state is trying to define those buckets and ensure people are receiving services in the appropriate delivery system. And that, you know, when there are cases when people may kind of straddle the line, that we're working closely for care coordination. But given that that is not how the system has operated traditionally, and that now that those rules are really being enforced at the state level, it's gonna look very different. And so there will always be an asterisk really after 2022, when the county changes took effect, where you're gonna see a dip in some areas and an increase in other areas, simply because the policies are now being enforced that technically have always been there. And then with Proposition 1, it'll be even more obvious when the funding shifts really have an impact on which delivery system people go. So if they historically came to county behavioral health because of better access and it's faster than say going through commercial payer or Medi-Cal managed care plan, but they technically didn't meet medical necessity requirements, where once the state was kind of lenient on that, and now they're saying, no, we really want to enforce these rules, you're gonna see a natural dip, because people are no longer served here and they're served in the appropriate system, or vice versa. And so that's gonna be a challenge moving forward. So, you know, that's kind of what, if you look at the HMA continuum that they did for HCA, the HMA behavioral health continuum needs assessment that they did for HCA, you'll see where they make the distinctions between the systems and the payers. And they show you kind of where the gaps are from like an overall geography standpoint versus looking at the Medi-Cal specific population. And that is really where the state is asking county behavioral health to focus on the Medi-Cal population.
I just feel like it's gonna be more anecdotal, and that's where the partnerships between BCBH and the police are gonna have to say more on just word of this is the gaps that we're seeing, just because the numbers are gonna be switching. So I hope that is.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think all I can say is as far as how the state will evaluate us and continue to evaluate us, like through the EQRO, which has changed significantly since pre-Cal-AIM and now, how they look at us now. All we can go off are like HEDIS measures. So Marlene is very familiar with HEDIS measures. They use them on the managed care plan side, hospitals, ambulatory care. It's very medical, and it's a very medical model. And we're gonna be measured on the same kind of assessment as any other plan. And the services are gonna have to match according to what the state's looking for. And those plans are public, those reports are published. So if you go on DHC's websites, you'll see where we fall on HEDIS measures and how we compare to other county plans. And so that's how we're gonna have to start looking at it, in the way that the state has looked at the primary medical system as far as measurement. And then again, what comes out of Proposition 1 and the dashboards that the state creates. So really what they're trying to do is standardize things across counties, because historically, county behavioral health system has not had a mechanism to really consistently report out on outcomes that can be comparable across counties, which is why you can see such wide variation on services and outcomes for very specific programs, especially MHSA programs, which tended to vary from county to county. with Proposition 1, it really is more uniformity and consistency and outcomes reporting. And so that's what one of the tools is called the voter. Don't ask me to tell you the acronym, but that is one of the pieces is under BHSA, and it really captures all funding sources. So Medi-Cal, realignment, general fund, BHSA, all of the outcomes related to that across the state so that you can compare apples to apples. Because right now, it's always apples to oranges to tangerines to bananas, and that's why people are so like, how come in this county you can do X, Y, Z, and it looks like this versus over here, it looks like something completely different, and so that's what this whole behavioral health transformation at the state level has been about.
Looking through the slides, reproductive health care, what makes a prohibited entity? I mean, they list Planned Parenthood as an example, but what qualifies something as a prohibited entity? What's the impact on that? Is there state
That
funding?
I can't get into specifically, or that's outside of the BH realm, but we could definitely dig down and assist as far as finding that on DHS resources.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for providing this. It was really interesting to read through. I wouldn't say it was exciting, but I think it's important for us to have that information, to keep it, and we're gonna be referring back to it because this is something that we're gonna have to do all year long, but at least this year, so. Thank you very much for doing that. All right, we have a special presentation today, so I'm gonna move on to that, introduce you to our district attorney, Eric Nazarenko. Eric has been in office for, how many years?
4.5.
Oh, 4.5. He has a 6-year term. Yes,
Appointed and then
and then elected, yes, so he still has a 6-year term. And we always appreciate you coming. You come every year, I think, to talk about mental health laws as they change and hopefully improve.
Grateful for the opportunity, Chair Hyman, Vice Chair Brabau and McKay, and members of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board. Thank you for allowing me once again to give you an update on our mental health unit, some of the key new laws that intersect with it, and also some new initiatives that we're launching here in Ventura County. So just in way of background, how I got so invested and involved in this issue. I was a line level trial prosecutor for 13 years before becoming the DA. And in that capacity, I saw the obvious intersection between mental health and our caseload. I'm also a family member of a former sibling who suffered from both bipolarity as well as substance abuse. So I can relate personally to some of the challenges that family members and loved ones, as well as individuals face. And thanks to Board of Supervisor Matt Levere and his colleagues, when I was appointed in 2021, we launched the first ever mental health unit in the DA's office. And that was a result of an appropriation from the Board of Supervisors and Matt that allowed for 2 prosecutors to begin the mental health unit. As you'll see in just a moment, we're now up to 6. To take this issue statewide, I joined the California Nominee Board 2 years ago and gave a very similar presentation at their statewide conference, which was just last week in Sacramento. So without further ado, we started off with 2 mental health unit prosecutors, and now we are up to 6. This has been an intentional effort really to grow the unit and move away from what I would call ancillary caseloads. I didn't want individuals to be attending to mental health cases, but also have a full caseload of narcotics or gangs, domestic violence. I wanted this unit to be specialized and dedicated and incredibly well-trained in this arena. And I'm very proud to say that they are. They're led by Chief Deputy Rochelle Dean, who is joined by our senior paralegal, Maria Rodriguez. And a shout out to Rochelle as well as my executive assistant, Erica Oatman, for this presentation today. So I want to talk about mental health diversion, some significant changes in this legal landscape. Mental health diversion basically starts with a diagnosis in accordance with the Diagnostic Statistic Manual number 5. And I was just informed on Thursday at California NAMI that the most recent version, as many of you all know, is the DSM-5 TR, the DSM-5 text revision. So you have to have a qualifying mental health disorder within that DSM-5 text revision. The most common ones that we see: schizoaffective disorder, bipolarity, schizophrenia, as well as PTSD. And 2 years ago, the legislature introduced and the governor signed into law, borderline personality now also qualifies as a mental health disorder for purposes of diversion. So what is this? It's basically a way to postpone prosecution so that the individual can get help and assistance with their mental health disorder in a non-custodial, non-confinement-like setting. If they are successful, the case is dismissed, it is sealed, and it is as if it never happened. So obviously, you have to have a qualifying diagnosis. You also have to have that diagnosis provided to the court by a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a licensed clinical social worker, a marriage family therapist, a behavioral health specialist or clinician, like the type that work on behalf of Dr. Dennering. But you also need to have an offense that qualifies for mental health diversion. Virtually all offenses, both felony and misdemeanors, do today, with the following important exceptions. Murder and voluntary manslaughter do not apply. Most sex cases do not apply, with the exception of what we call Penal Code 314 or indecent exposure cases. Also, and this is a very important distinction between military diversion and mental health diversion. For mental health diversion, DUIs are not eligible. DUIs are not eligible. So I talked a little bit about how this process works. It starts with that diagnosis by a behavioral health specialist. Thereafter, and by the way, it has to be within 5 years of submission to the court. So there is kind of a stop clock, if you will, but it's a 5-year one. So you have a 5-year diagnosis is presented to the court, and along with the diagnosis is some type of treatment plan. The behavioral health specialist or psychiatrist or psychologist is recommending for that disorder that they undergo a specific type of treatment plan. Now, here's an important distinction in the law. When this started in 2018, 2019, the burden was on the individual seeking mental health diversion to show that there was a connection or nexus between their disorder and the criminal offense. That has now flipped 180. So now in 2025, it is presumed that the mental health disorder played a significant factor or was a motivating cause in the criminal offense. It is now up to the government or the prosecution to rebut that through a standard known as clear and convincing evidence. So the gatekeeper in all of this is the court. The court has to be satisfied that the treatment plan will work, that the individual does not represent a unreasonable risk to public safety. Typically, these programs, 1 year top or 1 year maximum, if it's a misdemeanor, it can go up to 2 years if it's felony. It's accompanied by regular check-ins with the court on the treatment or progress. And if they are successful, the case is dismissed and the record is sealed. So you're asking, Eric, how are we doing so far in Ventura County? Let me share that with you. Pretty good. We've had 483 cases that have come to fruition with a 329 graduation rate. That's 68% who are satisfactorily and successfully completing diversion. That still means about a third are not. 2/3 is pretty good. Now, as you'll see in that bottom sentence, 250 individuals are in mental health diversion as we speak. So when I come back, I'll give you an update on how they are progressing. But 2/3 success rate is very good. And I want to thank our colleagues in the Public Defender's Office, Chief Deputy Rodriguez. This is a undertaking that is sometimes adversarial, sometimes it's not. But I think collectively, both sides of the criminal justice system are able to give individuals help and treatment when it's appropriate. So I'm gonna give you a couple examples of where it has worked. Now, in full disclosure, I completely cherry picked this. Right now, I just wanted to look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. And I could have gone ahead and given you the 33% of individuals who were unsuccessful, but in these vignettes, I'm gonna give you successful outcomes where people got the treatment they needed and it really worked. So I'm gonna start with this first one. What's not on this slide? A couple of things. One, mom said, son, you're gonna have to start paying rent. The son, who had a history of bipolarity 1 and general anxiety disorder, became violent. He struck and kicked his mom as well as his nearby sister. Fortunately, had no previous criminal convictions. He was charged by our office with assault likely to cause great bodily injury and battery. So he went into mental health diversion in October 2023. His treatment plan was adopted by the court and it included weekly therapy sessions and independent living. Now, who provided those weekly therapy sessions? Outpatient Ventura County Behavioral Health. So I want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Dennerang and her people for allowing this individual to successfully complete mental health diversion. It took 18 months because he was charged with a felony. And just a couple months ago, he was terminated successfully from diversion. And at the successful termination, he appeared in court alongside his mom. So good news. Now, something that's not a creature of statute, but rather a creature of collaboration in the courts is mental health court. This is reserved typically for more serious or violent cases. Mental health diversion is what we call a pre-plea. They have not entered a plea, but mental health court is known as a post-plea. They have typically pleaded guilty. The time in state prison or jail is oftentimes suspended. That is, it is not imposed. And the reason it is suspended is to incentivize their treatment and cooperation. And I'm going to share with you in just a moment an example of where that occurred. But as I just mentioned, the jail is suspended. If they successfully do everything they're supposed to do, their custody time is removed and not imposed. What is the key difference here, other than the fact that it's done after a plea is taken? They are monitored and supervised heavily by probation. So there are suspension of Fourth Amendment rights. They can be searched. Oftentimes drug testing and alcohol testing. There can be unannounced inspections of where they're living and what they're doing. So this is all intended to help them comply with the terms and conditions of their probation. So it's covered up there a little bit, but this is right now in the Ventura County landscape. 21 are currently in mental health court. There have been 5 successful graduations and 9 are applying. So it's more modest in terms of numbers. The screening is more tight, but nevertheless, the success rate is good. And let me share with you. There's a lot of move. Oh. I'm about to share it. There we go. So thank you. Again, what's not on this slide, this is an individual who had a history of substance use disorder and clinical depression. So he doesn't qualify for mental health diversion. He's not in that DSM-5 text revision. He also is alleged to have committed a number of felonies, namely identity theft, as well as some misdemeanors of posting nude images. In this case, upset that his girlfriend had broken up with him, he created bogus or fake social media accounts and posted intimate images of his ex-girlfriend in them. The good news is he decided while in custody to undergo therapy. Specifically, he was submitted to Kepra House in the city of Ventura, which is a men's residential treatment program for substance use disorders and alcoholism. He completed it successfully. And then he continued thereafter with his outpatient treatment. He was also, because he was able to create these social media accounts, the bogus ones, a bit of a tech wonder. And he began taking computer classes. His probation was terminated successfully, and all the custody time that was leveraged over his head was not imposed. So this is another good story of mental health court working. So this is gonna sound somewhat similar, but there are two versions of what I consider our treatment for veterans. We obviously have a very active military presence in Ventura County, both as well as active, Fort Magoo and Fort Hueneme. There are two tracks for veterans, and when I say veterans, they can be either in active status or retired. It's Army, Air Force, Marines, and Navy, as well as National Guard and Coast Guard. So all of the above qualify. So similar to mental health diversion, in order to qualify for veterans diversion, you need to be a veteran. And you need to have some type of military-induced post-traumatic stress disorder, military-induced sexual trauma, military-induced traumatic brain injury, or military-induced substance use disorder or alcohol use disorder. Now, as I mentioned at the outset, unlike mental health diversion, a veteran who signs up and is accepted into veterans diversion can qualify for the program with a DUI. And I'm going to give you a specific example in just a moment. So, as I mentioned, all branches of the military, including the National Guard and the Coast Guard, the diversion, they don't enter a plea, everything is suspended so they can complete treatment. And if they go into veterans court, they have very aggressive monitoring and supervision, both by probation and by the Veterans Administration. An example of such will be shared with you in just a moment. They do everything they're supposed to, the case is dismissed. So who is our gatekeeper for Veterans Treatment Court? A veteran himself. That's our senior deputy DA, David Barnes. He was also part of that mental health unit picture you saw earlier. Just a little bit about David. He obviously, as the slide tells, was in the United States Army for almost 6 years in the 82nd Airborne. He is a combat veteran, having served in the Middle East, and he also speaks fluent Arabic. So one of his cases, before we get there, how are we doing in terms of our Veterans Treatment Court? So for last year, 57 admissions and 60 successful graduates. So you ask me, how can you have more graduates than admissions? The reason is they carry over from previous years. So that's why you have 60 that have successfully graduated with 57 new admissions in this year. Only 3 unsuccessful, which is a good track record. So here's that case I wanted to share with you. I mean, to put a fine point on this, this was a veteran suffering from alcohol use disorder significantly. He too was a combat veteran, alarming and disturbing blood alcohol contents, extremely high. This case was initiated when you ran into another motorist. She suffered injuries, although fortunately they were minor. So he was admitted into the Veterans Treatment Program, and he also began outpatient under the auspices of the Veterans Administration and our probation department. As part of his probationary sweeps or checks, he was found on a number of occasions in what probation described as a semi-conscious state. He was drinking on some occasions 1 bottle of tequila chased down by several beers on a daily basis. As you can see, his blood alcohol contents were extremely high, 0.33. And then when he was taken to the hospital, even higher, 0.43. Staff said if he hadn't been taken in, he could have died of what we call acute alcohol poisoning. So he was allowed to remain in the program. with the condition that he go to the Veterans Administration in West LA. For those of you who know the site very close to Wilshire on the 405 freeway, they have a residential treatment program that is known as DOM, or the domiciliary. That is where he stayed for an extended period, almost 3 months. He was able to get sober. He thereafter began taking classes at nearby UCLA Extension. And he also worked on life skills and labor skills while he was at the VA site. So the good news is he left sober. He has been such, and like many people who have overcome an addiction, he became a peer support specialist and now works in the Los Angeles area for the Center for Alcohol and Drug Abuse. So another success story. Something entirely different, and I know I'm moving fast through a number of different topics, but this is one that's very important to me, and Diane and Cheryl, you may know about what just happened. Assembly member Jackie Irwin was able to successfully introduce, and the governor signed into law, a bill that will expand the use of gun violence restraining orders in Ventura County, El Dorado County, Alameda, and Santa Clara counties. Why just those 4? Because it's a pilot program. I'll explain in just a moment what a GVRO is and how it applies here. But the key takeaway here that I always want to share with people, and I mentioned this last week at NAMI, is there's sort of 3 pathways when someone is under mental distress or in a potential detainment for involuntary hold for firearms to be removed lawfully, that is taken away from them so they don't pose no risk to themselves or others. The first is, and the WIC, by the way, that's an acronym for Welfare and Institution Code. So the Welfare and Institution Code 8102 allows law enforcement for up to 30 days before going to the court to take away firearms from those who are at risk to themselves and are being detained for a mental health evaluation. Welfare and Institution Code 8103 prohibits for a 5-year period any individual who is admitted into a LPS, Benjamin Pepper Short, mental health facility. And then the bill that was just signed is the one that's in that last sentence, and that's AB 1344. If somebody poses a risk to themselves or others, and they may not qualify for a mental health, they may not have an active criminal case, but nevertheless, we see that they are suffering from some type of mental distress, suicidal ideation, they are expressing harm to a school setting, an employer, or others. We now, for the first time, beginning on January 1st of next year, as DAs, have the ability to go into court and petition the judge in the civil capacity for a gun violence restraining order, which would restrain the person from not only possessing them right then and there, but also it's what we call prophylactic in nature. They couldn't do so in the future. They last for upwards to 1 to 5 years. So a big thanks to Assembly Member Irwin. This is our 3rd effort. We had tried this a number of times and we were finally successful on this pilot program. And just to walk out on this one more way. What's the goal here? The goal is to get us all 50 accounts. But in order to do that, we have to be successful in Ventura County first. We have to be reasonable and sensible. We have to understand the inherent right under the Second Amendment. But we also have to find those instances where if somebody is a danger and it's clear and eminent to the court, that we advocate and argue for a gun forfeiture. So I hope the next time I'm here, I can give you an update on how this is progressing. And here's just a really quick example, and I promise we're almost near the end here. This is a case where an individual was also under extreme alcohol use disorder, and he had guns in his possession after the police were summoned in what is commonly referred to as a check the welfare visit. He didn't want to go to the hospital, so he was taken to the VA. The VA felt that he didn't meet the 5150 involuntary hold criteria. So what did we do? We got one of our own investigators in the DA's office to seek that gun violence restraining order from the courts. and it was granted for 5 years. 12 firearms in total were found in his possession, which he has relinquished to law enforcement. So I think this is how we want to use the law to make sure that people who aren't in a position to have firearms do not. I'm incredibly excited. I know there are members of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department here, and this is something that just got launched literally 3 weeks ago, and it is known as the Blue Envelope. And I shared this last week statewide at NAMI. They too were excited. Basically, every police agency and the sheriff's department has signed up for this. You can go into your nearby station and you can request a blue envelope. You can request a blue lanyard. You can request a blue wristband or sticker. And what does this denote? It denotes in a traffic stop setting that this individual may be part of the autistic spectrum disorder. He may have special needs, be developmentally disabled, suffer from general anxiety, thus the encounter should be treated differently. And what does that communicate to the police officer, the sheriff deputy? Sometimes loud jarring noises like sirens can be triggering. Oftentimes multicolored lights, like you can see on the top of a patrol car, can be triggering. Oftentimes very loud and aggressive commands, they too can be triggering. So what this blue envelope announces is a different approach, a different type of encounter will most likely benefit all parties involved. Please consider that this individual may not be able to fully understand. They may be developmentally disabled, unable to hear or communicate. So this is a way for us just to make sure that these encounters are de-escalated and may end safely and appropriately. So very excited about this. You're going to see in just a second what the envelope looks like. It also allows for individuals on this envelope to write who they would like their emergency contacts to be. So if those emergency personnel need to be contacted to help law enforcement understand the context of the situation, they will be there. Some interesting feedback at the NAMI conference. One was, can we extend this to homes so that when individuals are responding to an apartment or residence, they too know that this person may fall within these categories and need special treatment. And also they like the idea of the envelope or the lanyard being very visible, that it would be seen by law enforcement very clearly, either on their neck or on their dash or on the car console. So really good. All right, this is the very last 2 slides. Yeah. So for those of you, I don't think when I was here last, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had even begun. We have in the district attorney's office a certain percentage of assets that we seize from criminals, drug dealers, which are obviously ill-gotten by nature. I requested of one of our special assistants, Chet Hughes, and he in turn did the research. Can we turn around and use some of those seized assets for drug dealers and return them to the Ventura County Medical Center to help with detoxification, otherwise known as withdrawal management? Obviously, there's a nexus, a connection here. The dealers are peddling the poison that's getting the people who are at this treatment center addicted. The answer was it can't go directly towards the actual detox itself, but it can be used for the step down, sober living, residential treatment placement that they go to afterwards. So how does that look? $80,000 of seized assets from drug dealers has been returned to the Healthcare Foundation. Thank you, David Towner of Ventura County. And it is helping to provide treatment, sober living facilities, and residential dual diagnosis help. So more to come. We're going to continue to do that on a quarterly basis. I just hope that other offices throughout the state are able to look at their assets similarly and also apply them for this noble purpose. That's all I've got. And I just want to say thanks. If we have time, Chairwoman Hyman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. As always, a lot of good information. Thanks, Eric. Any questions for Eric or comments? Yeah, please.
talked about this gun violence restraining order, which is amazing. But then I think it's just for the people that they go seek help through the VA, right? What about those people that they don't want to see, for example, a therapist, through VA? Is it going to be a like reportable thing through mandated reporters?
Great question. So the gun violence restraining orders, the power that we'll possess at the beginning, January 1 of 2026, is to review all cases that come before us. So we get on average about 25,000 cases a year. Now, the ones that we file, you're not gonna need a gun violence restraining order because we can go into court and say, Judge, we need a protective order to bar that person from possessing a firearm. But oftentimes the cases are rejected. They're sent back for more investigation or follow-up. A victim doesn't want to cooperate. We don't have the evidence we need to file the case. That doesn't necessarily mean they don't pose a danger. So what this allows us to do now is we as DAs can enter the civil arena. We can go into the third floor courtroom of the Ventura County Superior Court and say, Your Honor, on behalf of the family member, on behalf of the roommate, on behalf of the employer, on behalf of law enforcement, we are seeking a gun violence restraining order for the following reasons. So that is a power that historically we have not possessed and we will soon have. Great. Yes.
You stated that this is the mental health gun forfeiture, program is for Ventura County only. Did I hear that right?
Or counties.
Okay.
Yeah, so on that slide, the first two Welfare Institute code sections apply state law. And then the gun violence restraining orders only apply right now to Alameda, Santa Clara, El Dorado, and Ventura counties. Why? Because it was basically a concession that we made. Show us how this is working, how you're reasonably implementing it, because there's a reporting requirement that we submit all our data to the UC Davis Gun Violence Family Research Center. They'll monitor the progress and say, let's go statewide or let's not. And by the way, the slides that you have in your packet are a little bit different, just slightly from the one I presented. I made some last minute changes and revisions over the weekend.
You're allowed. Andre?
Thank you, just Chairman Ezra. Thanks for all the great news. Back to your point of having a great graduation rate from your diversion process. How are you going to monitor that going forward, like for recidivism? What metrics are you going to follow to see how to look for long-term success?
That's a great question, Andre. Right now, we just have the data from the courts, how many enter and how many successfully graduate or how many unsuccessfully are terminated. We're not necessarily correlating right now how many of those successful graduates then reoffend or recidivate. I don't have that data right now. I'd like to get it, but right now I don't have it at the ready. I don't know, Michael, if that's something you guys are looking at all, but we just don't have that data available.
I don't think it's available. I think there's two agencies that conceivably could track that data. One will be probation locally, and which would be ESTC.
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a great area of inquiry. But it's a map to the game. Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, I wanted to, on the topic of mental health diversion, I wanted to shed some light on how this process works. I'm gonna go really briefly on this. And so you see the slide, it's like, oh, a psychologist evaluates them and determines whether they're suitable or amenable for treatment. How it happens is that person's charged with a criminal complaint, misdemeanor or felony. And their attorney, after meeting with them, and oftentimes meeting with their family or other supports, determined that this person was experiencing severe mental illness at or about the time of the arrest or the alleged offense. And then so at this point, we do a deep dive in our client's history as far as getting documents from behavioral health treatment providers, from hospitals, and sometimes that extends outside the county, depending on where the person's from, other states. And then at this point, more often than not, we consult with a psychologist or a licensed social worker who will then evaluate our clients and provide an opinion as to their diagnosis. Is it consistent with what they have a record of, or in many instances, they've been previously undiagnosed. Once we compile all this information, and included in that is a proposed treatment plan, is then we file a motion with the court. And so this is a motion no different than any other kind of litigation where we're filing, it's a copy of the district attorney's office. They make a decision whether to oppose or not. And at the end of the day, if it's the judge's decision, as Eric had mentioned, whether to grant someone mental health diversion. And then if they're granted mental health diversion, their attorneys are the ones who are working with their treatment providers to ensure that this treatment plan continues to address their treatment needs. Because as many of us knows, is that recovery and treatment on regarding behavioral health issues is not a straight line. And oftentimes medications need to be changed. The intensity of treatment needs to be changed. And so we've had good success, as Eric said, is once we get people in, but oftentimes it's getting people in the door after we file motions. And so I just wanted to kind of make it wasn't like this, all of a sudden client's charged and then psychologist sees them and it goes forward from there. But it's oftentimes a heavy lift from their attorneys, whether it's their public defender clients or other clients.
Yeah, that's a great synopsis, and I would also just add to it, I didn't mention before, the client has to waive what we call their speedy trial rights. So everybody, as we know from law and order, they have a right to a jury trial or preliminary hearing within a certain period of time under state and federal laws. They have to waive that in order for that 12 to 18-month process to play out. Marlon?
Just have a question from that, example, Michael, so in the treatment plan, let's just say they've graduated. And I understand that you don't have the data yet to see how you're doing, but do you talk about they've graduated, they're gonna need continued treatment services, like what's the step down? Who do you do a warm handoff to now so that they can continue to seek the treatment that they need?
Well, it's not necessarily, we're not the treatment providers, that's well beyond our expertise, but.
Right.
But what we do is we work with the treatment providers, oftentimes it's behavioral health, sometimes it's private, so it's been Kaiser at times as well. And we, behavioral health has assured us, and we've seen this by working with our clients, is that subsequent to their graduation, is that services are continue to be provided at the level that are needed.
That was my question. So services are continued,
Yes.
and then Dr. Dennering, that would be if they're seeking treatment with you all, you would work through that process.
Correct, and so, Dr. Shipper's right over there, if you wanna hear all the ins and outs of what they do. But that's exactly what Dr. Shipper's team does, so that is, at the point of, entering the program, throughout the program, and then post, completion of the program, and it's all based on medical necessity, right? And so the other piece that we like to also help remind people is that while we may be there during, a good portion of it, to Michael's point, if they have commercial insurance, we will coordinate with them. And if Kaiser or Blue Shield or somebody else is responsible ultimately, because not everyone who ends up in a situation is a Medi-Cal person with no money. That's the other misconception. And so part of what we do in behavioral health is we are obviously a part of this team. But then when it comes to ongoing treatment, especially, we will coordinate with the appropriate system for continued care.
And that was one of the things that the court, when way back when this, it's not that long, but when mental health diversion was initially passed, there were several committees of stakeholders that included our office, district attorney's office, the private defense bar, probation, I think other behavioral health treatment providers and the courts. And the courts wanted assurances that folks weren't going to be cut off upon graduation. Because the idea, the hope is that this was an opportunity to get people engaged in treatment and to continue on with the treatment.
Any other questions, Sylvia?
I think for family members that are afraid to call, the police, because they don't want their loved ones going to jail, specifically if it's a violent on a family member. How do the police like? Kind of, do they say, hey, we have this diversion, or how is that introduced? Not in that, no, not in that situation, right?
Yeah, as Michael just mentioned, it wouldn't be at that threshold. First responders arrive at the scene of potential crime. It's gonna be down the line, most likely a conversation between the represented counsel and the accused. So that's where it's gonna be initiated, the opportunity for mental health.
But some family members might still not want to put their family member in jail, but they can also do, like, you know what I mean, like, would they later reach out
Sure, that's a great question.
and then press charge them?
So what we will get, it's actually not that uncommon, we will get notified by a family member, either an email or something in writing or even a phone call. You have charged my son, you have charged my husband. I do not want him to be prosecuted. I would like him or her to go ahead and receive treatment. So our response is, please make sure that whoever's representing your loved one is aware of that. And they seek it through their defense counsel, the public defender, or the defense attorney. And that's how the process is initiated. So we do get oftentimes input from the family members that they want a postponement of prosecution. They don't want the traditional approach. And that is something that we then refer to whoever represents the individual.
But it's like a postponement of charges.
Typically, they've been charged, well,
Do you know what I mean? Like, so a lot of family members, especially maybe for cultural reasons, they won't want to press charges. Even though it's something that's very serious, like with a knife or something like that.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, could you come back and say, well, could the family member maybe change their mind if they receive that the situation isn't getting better, or, you know, later on they could put their life in jeopardy because they then say, yeah, I do it as charges because I heard about this program and feel like it's time.
Well, a couple things, there's a lot to unpack there, and there are great questions. Well, the first is, you know, the government decides whether or not to press charges. It's not necessarily the loved one of the family. That's ultimately our decision based on our facts and the law. But there's no way for us to know about what is happening unless a case is brought to us and we've evaluated it. And then either what we call pre-filing diversion, sometimes you don't even file a criminal charge. They just go through a number of classes, rehabilitative in nature, the case is dismissed, or we actually file the charge. That's the entry point. And then, as Michael mentioned, there's a conversation between the attorney and the accused about what the appropriate next steps are.
Okay, and I just had another question about the veterans.
Sure.
If they don't have a diagnosis, especially, it's difficult for, I think 2012 is when medical records for the VA went digital. A lot of veterans who had paper hand jammed medical records have more difficult with getting like their claims. So that would be for some like Gulf War, maybe some Vietnam vets, but what if they don't have those diagnoses or they don't have it from the VA? How does that work? But they do have clearly like PTSD.
You know, something, I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to hazard to guess one. So let me, through the Madam Chair, get back to you.
Okay.
I just don't.
Thank you.
Sylvia, back to your original question, were you asking more like right at the moment that law enforcement was called?
Yeah, I think, and yeah, I've had this experience too. There's clearly sometimes a crime has been committed or violent, and as a family member, you don't know what to do. You don't want your family member to go to jail. And so, like, as a family member, how do you make that choice? I've had police officers say, like, it's better that they go, you know, and not escalate later. But it's a very difficult situation at that time. Emotions are high to make that decision. And then you get something maybe tragic down the line or something. So I was just trying to figure out like, how do we help families get there?
I think in the moment when the law enforcement is called to a house, to a situation going on, someone, especially someone who's a mental crisis. We are kind of limited sometimes when it comes to the choices we've made. We have to make at that point, especially things we see in front of us. We're obligated as police officers to take enforcement actions on certain things. Now, there are leniency things that can happen for certain things, lesser crimes, misdemeanors, maybe even we can come up with alternate solutions. But as far as the frontline police officers, before it gets to Mr. Rico's office, it definitely has to come through us first. So through any law enforcement agency, he's not going to know about anything unless it's filed through a law enforcement agency. But our hands are tied when it comes to crimes of violence. You even mentioned someone with a knife. That police officer or that deputy, does have to take action. And they could face civil litigation themselves if something were to happen. And ultimately, it's not a great situation because those things are so emotional, a lot of things going on. And I always tell people, I've only known you for 5-6 minutes. You've known your family member for your whole life. And so explain to me how you de-escalate this. Explain to me how you see this. But in the end goal is to keep you safe and to keep them safe and hopefully keep that person from committing more crime. And so sometimes sadly, jail is the only option at that point. And we can talk all about what happens in jail but once it gets to us, hopefully we can definitely get it up to the district attorney's office and it's routed in the right path. But it is important when family does call that they articulate that to the law enforcement. My family member suffers from this, my family member suffers from that, because that does get included in a report. You know, the person told me that they said this, the person said this, they have a therapist in this. So that is all like weighed in. So when they review it, because they don't get to see me, the district attorney won't see me until I go to court. They're just looking at my reports and looking at my body camera footage. So when those things are articulated at the time, that's when they get the help they need, hopefully down the road, and hopefully they never see us again.
Yeah, I think if family members are more aware in certain communities, if family members are more aware in certain communities, they might actually make that call or, not call at all, but if they were aware of the diversion.
Yeah, and this is actually kind of piggyback on a couple slides later about the blue envelope program and things like that. Like those are great things to be part of and like, hey, they gave you this, use blue envelope. The blue, I like the idea of putting it on the house, and I'm gonna talk to Commander Harris, who's the front runner of the blue envelope program, about the house option. But that blue envelope doesn't just apply to a car, it can definitely apply to somebody like, here's my brother's envelope, or here's my sister's envelope, and like that all plays into it, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Michael?
And another thing what family members can do is when you call 911, when you call the crisis center, is ask if there's a law enforcement response, it requests a CIT trained officer. Almost everyone in the sheriff's department is trained for CIT, but you might be out in Santa Paula or Simi Valley, another place. Most of their officers are trained too, but just by making that request in and of itself, that isn't gonna guarantee safety for everybody, but it changes the nature of the call. So when the officer shows up, they understand they're dealing with someone who's more than likely is experiencing symptoms of severe mental illness. And so that changes the response. So as opposed to, because law enforcement officers, every law enforcement I've talked to over the years, their goal is to make it home that night. And so if they are confronted with someone who seems agitated and starts charging towards them, they don't have that information, then they're perceiving that person as a threat. As opposed to trying to go into de-escalation. Now, depending on what the nature of the conduct is that de-escalation may not be an option. However, many times it is. So just by making that request, as far as a CIT trained officer, it helps. No guarantee, but it helps. And in these situations, what we're talking about is there's like no on and off switches. There's no black and white. It's kind of like, how can we best get my family member help?
Right. Any other questions? Yeah. Gonna take one from the public? Sure.
Not really a question, but a success story. My name is Ratan Damnani, and my son has been a client of BCBH for 25 years maybe. He was in a facility, a residential facility about 2.5 years ago. And he was upset at the staff member who refused to let him do something. And he got quite upset at her, got agitated, made a verbal threat against the staff member. And he was seemingly out of control, police were called. And of course, his argument was, I didn't do anything. But then he resisted arrest, which made things worse. So there were 2 felony charges against him. So he went into court. He was represented by a private attorney. The attorney requested diversion, like Eric has told us, and it was we had to get a forensic psychologist to confirm the conditions that he was going under, that he was in fact going through a mental health crisis while he committed these 2 felonies. And so the process went forward as a diversion case. This whole process may have taken a few months while he was incarcerated. And then he was moved from there to a treatment program, secure facility. He was under conservatorship anyway. At that point, he, for the first time in these years, his medications were adjusted and stabilized and changed so that because he could be monitored closely and frequently and regularly, that has been a huge impact. So I was telling Derek just before he walked in here that the success of my son is a shining example of how this program works, and he is doing quite well now. He is placed at a non-secure facility, and he's a different person. He speaks like his cognition is good. He speaks very well, and he's very polite, very helping others. So, but let me share that. Thank you, Eric, for you.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, Richard, for sharing that. Okay, I think in the interest of time, I'm sure we've taken a lot of your time. I'm sorry. Okay, it has to be quick though, because Eric has a schedule to.
My name is Brenda again. Thank you so much, Ed, I'm really quite impressed with the Blue program, Blue Ribbon program. This particularly for families with adults with autism, because there is such a need for families to really integrate that information. I just have a couple of suggestions. I know that in the past, for example, in Oxnard, the police department had always given special treatment to cases with autism. Particularly if they went missing, they had a priority, and that has changed. I think that, it would be a great, point to add to that Blue Ribbon program. And also, I know that just from talking to other families, if we can, many of our loved ones have had problems with the law. And that, that information goes into their chart. I'm wondering if this Blue Ribbon program can also be, pardon me? Blue envelope, I'm so sorry. Blue envelope program that information can be just noted into their chart so that when a police officer is called for an altercation, that, automatically pops up. That integration of information, as you were saying, Mr. Dryatar, that is so important to the officers that encounter that. So just those 2 things can make such a difference. And to the point to Sylvia, even when a family member feels so intimidated to not be able to say anything in front of the police officer, they will have that information already, going into the home so that they can. I have found that a lot of police officers are very smart in approaching these situations. So that might be such something to integrate both those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know that Deputy Dyer and myself and Sheriff Frohoff and Sergeant Ogden-Huss, who's the real driver of this for the Sheriff's Department, will take all this input and make sure that it's disseminated to our coordinating committee of all the police chiefs and the sheriff. So thank you to the Peter County Sheriff's Department, and thank you all, Behavioral Health, for inviting me back. I hope you'll do so again. Take care.
We will. I just had one more question. How can someone get a blue one?
they're available at the police stations and the sheriff stations. So they, as of September 25th or thereabouts, were available, the envelopes, and in some cases lanyards and stickers and bracelets.
Okay, well, I just think we need to get that out into the community probably, and maybe a little wider circle, and probably NAMI's doing that, and we have somebody here from the Autism Society. So.
Yeah, like Diane just mentioned, so the Thousand Oaks Acorn had a really nice story, for those of you who read the Acorn, but yeah, we'll continue, I mean, this just happened a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago, it's in its infancy, and I think the news will continue to spread.
Great, okay, thanks again,
Yeah,
Eric,
thanks,
for being
everybody.
here, thank you for all your time and all you're doing. Okay, moving along, board member comments? Do you have any board member comments? Anybody have anything they need to share? No? Okay, old business, and this is, we're gonna talk about goals. We've been talking about leading up to this time, so we are gonna start this discussion now. Hopefully we will be able to get through it. So last year, we had the board, as it was constituted then, had selected 2 goals for us to work on for the year. Those are, we work on those with ad hoc committees, which means that the committees can meet on Zoom so that if you're, when you're making a commitment to that, you might not have to drive all the way from Bell Canyon or Cedar Valley or somewhere very far away to be here. Which is really an advantage, but in addition, we have a very specific goal then that we're working on with those that ad hoc committee. And then within a few months, hopefully, but before the end of our fiscal year, we can then present a report on whatever we have found out from that. This year is a little different. I will tell you the goals from last year, with the treatment, our services for the TAPE individuals, transitional youth, and the other one was for crisis services. Although we did divide into 4 groups, we were really hammered and it was hammered, I should say, not hammered, well, that too, but we were hampered by the fact that many of our members had to leave the board, had to resign because of a conflict of interest provision in the WIC code that became more evident that we we're gonna have to do more. So there was this big change in the board, and so we really did not get to progress as much as we would have liked to. So we can continue with those 2 goals. They really kind of like brand new goals because we really didn't get very far with them, or we can switch. We're a brand new board, we can do whatever we want. It's good for us to have probably at least 2 goals so that everyone can participate in a work group without violating the Brown Act, because we can't have more than half the members to be on this work group, so we do need to be careful of that. There's a couple different things that certainly the executive committee can at the executive committee, we passed around a couple of ideas. I'm gonna put those out there also. It is gonna be important during this coming fiscal year to monitor the changes that are gonna have to occur both in this department as well as some of the CBOs, et cetera, that we're working with our partners. And so we want to be able to monitor those. Yes, whatever goals we choose, we want to be sure we keep that in mind. And that we kind of look at that part as always a part of that goal, whatever it might be, whatever more specific area we might be looking at. One of the things I also wanted to mention was, you know, the prevention money, which you may or may not have picked up on, has been really almost eliminated from Prop 1, from the money that we get from the state specifically for prevention, which means that the county as a whole is going to have to look at how we can work with prevention without having the resources, financial resources that we had in the past. So that prevention may rise to the top as a goal simply because we know that it's a gap and it's an area that we need to really, we might want to focus on. One of the things that even if we decide not to make it as a goal, we do need to be in contact with the state public health, because all that money is going back to the state public health department. And we need to be putting a little pressure on there to try to figure out what are they gonna do with all that money and how do they expect us to kind of make up for that. There's some things that we can advocate for along those lines, and that could be part of it. Work group, it doesn't have to be, it can be sort of a separate action. We also have talked about, and this could be again a goal, reaching out into the community more. last year we were unable to really do much of that because everything was in flux, and it still is really in flux, but as you've heard from a couple people today, and even from Eric, there's things that are changing, but there's some things that we do need to start letting the community know that these are services that are gonna change, they may be eliminated, they may be serviced by some other group. It's just that I think information that we need to get out to the community, so we also are gonna talk about how to do that. There may be a community, I mean, a subcommittee, or not a subcommittee, that committee, I have to be careful with these terms, on outreach. And that would include some of us going to developing kind of a little presentation, going to city councils, going to churches, going to other community groups, other ones that have been suggested to present these changes, so the community is much more informed and involved in what's going on, can give us a lot more feedback also. So you have on your tables, and this may not be helpful, it's a little confusing. These were the slide deck these were the slides that we presented last year. And it's kind of what everybody was just brainstorming. These are the different ideas that people had, and we had little round little stickers that we put on saying this is what we like, and by the ones, there's a couple of these on each table, I think. So you have to kind of share. And that was how we got to where we were for last year. So we thought today what we would do is, Diana's nice enough to volunteer again to be the scribe. And we're gonna throw out some ideas of what we think we'd like to make as our goals, and what that would mean in terms of work groups and establishing work groups. These work groups can meet at any time. They will need a chair. So be thinking about that if you're interested in particularly passionate about something. Otherwise, I'm just gonna appoint you. So it would be nice if I could appoint people who really want to do it. But regardless of that, we're gonna take a few minutes to kind of think about what is it that we feel passionate about, that we feel this board should be working on this year, that could lead to recommendations for both the Department of Behavioral Health as well as to the Board of Supervisors. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Some of us newer here, what was the ultimate progress on these goals? Were these accomplished? Like,
No.
okay.
No, they were not accomplished much at all. It was crisis services and services to the population, but because of all the changes on the board, et cetera, it just became impossible because there's just people on and off. Just constant fluid movement. So no, they weren't. Okay, so we can go back to those and we can start all over again. We can incorporate that in different ways. Other questions? I know it's a little bit unclear if you were here. Sylvia?
So I see on here that, Ms. Torres is, the chair for the disparities reduction. And I know that, that's,
All the standing committees were,
okay,
yeah, we don't have standing committees anymore. That shouldn't be on there still. Sorry,
okay.
that's from last year.
So then the question is, I thought I brought that up. That maybe that the disparity reduction, an ad hoc committee. And if that were to be the case, then under that ad hoc, that's where that disparity, a goal for that could come under that ad hoc. So I could bring up a goal for a disparities issue that I think is important, or form, or not me, but we have formed the ad hoc committee for the disparities and have it ongoing, but meeting with a different goal for that disparity.
In order for it to be an ad hoc committee, it has to have a specific goal with a kind of like a timeline and endpoint. If we just say we're gonna have a disparities committee that's gonna do something, then we're back to where we were, that it's a standing committee and it will have to be here in person and be, this is just under the Brown Act.
Yeah.
That's why we got rid of the standing committee. So if you would come up with a goal that you would like.
That's what I was saying. So under the disparities ad hoc committee, as long as there is a different goal under that ad hoc for the disparities for 3 or 4 months, and then that's it. And then there could be another goal under, well, I would like to see if that is possible. Otherwise, I would just be, I can just say what disparities, my disparities goal is for. That, I just wanted to bring it up, especially to the other Latinos on the band.
So are you suggesting that one thing you'd like us to write down as the possible ad hoc committee is disparities?
Right,
And that means.
working on one specific goal under the disparities, and then if, for the BHAB, if you wanted to focus on whatever, these other goals, right? That. But that's just a suggestion that I have, and I just wanted to bring specifically why we have, you know, our adverse people, adversity on the board, so. That's just a suggestion bringing that.
Would, if it's a disparities committee that then has different things go underneath it, would it then be a standing committee?
If there's one goal and that one goal is met under. And then you finish that, and then there's other people that could come in and work on a different goal.
Well, but so the idea, and I think if this is a good thing. Ad hoc committees can be created, they can have different lengths of time. But the idea is they basically have a job, and once they finish their task. Then they go away, but then you can start a new one. So you could have a whole series of ad hoc committees related to different disparity issues.
That's what I'm trying to.
Rather
Yeah.
than always have a disparities committee.
Yeah.
Subject to,
That's what I was trying to, theory.
You could have more than one.
Okay.
They don't even have to be a series, they can just be more than one.
Okay.
And each one, you could even have two at the same time, if you guys think you have enough bandwidth for that.
Right, and I understand that there would be have different people would have to go into each one so that it's not a standing.
No, not even that.
Okay,
Not even that, it's even more flexible than that.
okay,
But I think that the one important thing is that as a group, you want to act, on enough things that you're meeting your. Sorry about that, okay. Oh, but that's things up here. Sorry, now it's not working at all. I'll just speak louder. That's gone, that's gone. So you want to have the tasks defined, given the amount of time and bandwidth that everybody around this table has. Thank you. You want to have tasks that this group can begin to handle. And then you could try to work on a limited number and get some success around them and get some enthusiasm and just how to figure out how to work together as a group, because for the most part, you're a very new group, right? You're really just looking around the table and meeting people for many of you for the first time. But many, and so, try to think of things that you can build consensus with 3 or 4 other people, at least, to make that ad hoc committee a real committee.
okay, thank you.
And thanks for that, Marty. And then the ad hoc committee's recommendations come back to this full board before they go any forward. So
Yeah.
the full board has input into whatever the ad hoc committees are doing. Are we also, we're probably still very confused. It is a little confusing, but please feel free to ask questions and.
Would it help if I talk them through what this is? Is this confusing people or helping? I was gonna type it up and make it more readable, and we decided it was gonna be so different. I didn't.
Yeah, the only reason, I don't want this to be confusing, I almost didn't provide it at all. But I thought it might be interesting for people to see the kinds of things that were just suggested last year. That we just put up in like what we have here, so I don't really want to spend much time on this, do have questions on it.
So I guess, are we trying to kind of decide what essentially our strategic plan as a board is for the year? Okay.
Yeah, exactly, goes to the fiscal year.
To the fiscal year,
Our
okay.
fiscal, yeah.
And I guess what I always think about when setting goals is, what, you know, it's usually always has to happen, and I don't think we have to decide today, but when I think about like disparities, or say I'm interested in this more information on mental health, like. What's also the metric of success of this ad hoc committee, right? Like, so if you have a goal. Goals sometimes can be too broad, so I'd say if we're making suggestions, like what along with it would be a metric of success for that. Ad hoc committee, like I just see more information on mental health services at school. Seems really, really broad, but like what are we trying to, what would we be trying to? I'm interested in that one as an idea, because that seems to me having a teenage, you know, son that turns 13 this week and. Other stuff, like I am very interested in mental health education, substance abuse, and with the fentanyl, you know, stuff, and like it's everything. How can we support schools better, but also what would be success for us as an ad hoc committee is that we do presentations, that success would be a presentation at each district. I don't know, like for the BHAB, like just thinking through some stuff.
Well, okay. What I'm hoping we can do, and this is maybe, it is a little broad, but we have Prop 1 and the HR 1, and they're gonna change, as you can see, the funding sources and what we can do as county behavioral health department. So I think we have to, what I'm hoping, and I think we have to do this, is we have to do things that will be helpful to the board of the department in terms of, okay, we've looked at, I'm just gonna look at one thing, prevention, because I've mentioned that before. We went out into the community, we have talked to CBOs that are working, have some program on prevention. This is what there is, this is where we see a gap. So here's what we suggest. It's kind of that, you know, thing, knowing that we do have to look at this in the bigger picture of the funding sources and what has to change. And as we know, as Dr. Dennering has said many times, she's having to reorganize, or she has had to reorganize the entire department into different buckets, because that's where the buckets of money will come from. So she wants us to try to monitor these changes as we look at the community and what's going on with the community, with the department and then the community, so that we can be helpful in that way. Yeah, that's kind of, it's a little bit, yeah.
And I don't mean, sorry, hogging the mic there. I guess being a new board member, when we're setting these goals, it's like what, trying to understand, obviously, what comes for some of the presentations, but like what power do we actually have to affect some of these? What resources do we have to call? When we're setting these goals, it's important to understand like what can we actually do as a board to influence these things a little bit better, would help me understand what type of goals we can set.
I'm gonna ask the supervisor to answer your
Good
question.
question. I was gonna follow up with yours. When we adopted our budget this year.
You're in the no mic seat.
Yeah, yeah. When we adopted our budget this year, we had a lot of questions for Loretta, Dr. Dennery, about Prop 1. And basically had no impacts on this year's budget, but she was very clear that next year there's going to be significant impacts. Particularly with a lot of our prevention and early intervention and educational programs that where we're gonna see most of the cuts. And so I think as the board entertains its budget, its fiscal budget next year, it'd be helpful to have BHAB guidance as those cuts become. There's still a lot of unknown right now where the actual cuts are gonna be in terms of funding, so as that becomes more available, I think it would be helpful to have BHAB's guidance to the board of supervisors as, okay, we know there's gonna be this much reduction in funding, here's the programs which we as a BHAB kind of prioritize, so that when the board adopts the entire department budget, we have that input.
Yeah, exactly, and the department wants that too, I think that input. The other thing is, what we didn't do last year, and we are mandated to do this, by the WIC codes, are site visits. And so as we're thinking about goals, it would be helpful if we can have goals that will relate back to being able to visit certain sites in the community and be able to report back on what we learned from one of those site visits, which can be educational, but also informative, because most of the department doesn't know what's going on all those sites, and neither do any of us. So, I mean, some of them we might, but when we go out to the community and visit those, I think that can be really helpful too. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I understood when you guys talked about the budget, but what about the things we can do without having any budgets, like using volunteers? There are so many interns that, you know, they just need hours. And we can use them to go to the schools and have those talks and, you know, help the students at schools.
But it's a good idea. Again, we can make a suggestion to the department about the use of our grants. I'm not sure how that incorporates into the programs, and unfortunately, we lost Loretta. She had to go get on a statewide call. I think again, with the CBOs, maybe that's where we'll see more interns involved, but it's a question we can bring up with her. Marlon?
Chair Eichmann, and I understand we're kind of going through this strategic development process, so when I think about this, I think about like, one, does the department have an overall strategic plan? It's tied to then the budget and the priorities. Is there more information like that that can help us to then shape the goals? Like, I look at disparities, I totally see what Ms. Garcia is saying, and then I go into quality measures. Because that's the world that I'm living in right now, so there's a whole slew of things we can do. For HR 1, I think about readiness and outreach and education and sharing this, and this is coming, so how do we partner out? So I just kind of wondered, is there a strategic plan that the department has tied to budget? Do we have it? Should we start off maybe with like, what are the larger concepts and like principles, as then we drill down to what our goals are to then make sure they're SMART goals? I just kind of maybe wonder if we start off there at the next session and then kind of drill them down to like what our 2-3 goals are, to then drill down into what our ad hoc committees would be.
And unfortunately, we lost Dr. Dinner and we lost. Is anybody else here from the staff that can answer that, or? Okay, the question is the strategic goals that the department has. Are you in the process of developing those, or you have those now?
I don't know if it's strategic goals for the department overall. I mean, I'm not sure we have that, like, prevention has a strategic plan, but there isn't one of those for UCBs that I know of. We are developing the goals of the Behavioral Health Services Act, and that's what we talked about earlier with the community process. But as far as the specific goals for UCBs, it just aligns with what we're mandated to do, so we don't have a ton of say around that. I mean, that's, you know, like but yeah, that's what I think, because someone has to be. For me, with 19.
Courtney's here. Okay, Courtney.
Yes, hi. I'm hoping that you can hear me well enough. This is Courtney
Hi,
Hubel. I'm
Courtney,
the
can you-
MHS. Thank you.
Yeah, there you are.
Hello. So I'm the Mental Health Services Act manager. So we, in addition to
having
what,
trouble Getting your
can you
mic,
not hear me? Can you hear me now? Is that better? Hello?
Courtney,
Yes.
you can see her.
Can you hear me? Not well. Let's see. Hold on.
You're not muting her, right? Okay.
Okay,
Courtney,
I am on mute.
You're talking, we can't hear you. Perhaps you're still.
You can't
muted
hear me.
some way.
I'm off mute. Can you hear me now?
Well, okay, why don't,
There may have been something else.
yeah, okay, we'll move on, and then hopefully if Courtney can jump in, Courtney, whenever we
Yeah.
get you.
Because you can't hear me now, correct?
She's trying.
I'm trying. I'm
Okay,
trying. I'll put it in chat.
So in answer to your question, I think what is happening is the department, as I understand, is pretty much like she was saying, mandated to do certain things. And their goals, I think, work around those, but the consultants that have been working on a plan of the gaps, et cetera, that's where I think, unfortunately, it's not ready yet, and I'm not sure what you know that too. Oh, we lost her.
She's there.
Oh, she's still there. I'm not sure what the timeline for them to get back to us is. It may not be that far away, which might be helpful.
The other thing we could do, Jeremy, and I'm sorry, because I know I haven't been here for a number of meetings. If we look at then our bylaws to like what we're responsible for, then we can go ahead and pool and draft directly. And then later we could merge into, if it makes sense, any of the department goals, but we could potentially do that. that would help anchor the discussion to like, what do we advise? What does this look like? If we looked at the bylaws.
Well, the bylaws, which we just passed, new ones really are not gonna probably give us a lot of guidance on that, but, because they're very general. Again, I think we are free, according to the WIC code, which is probably more where this is. We're free to look at anything that has to do with behavioral health in the community or in the county. That is our purview, so we can go out and do these site visits, or the goal can be completely something that's outside of the county. Be more helpful if it's not, but probably, but it can be. So we have kind of a wide berth of what we can do. When we went through last year, we looked at things that we thought had specific issues that people were concerned about, like, for example, on crisis services. I think one of them was release, what happens when people are released from jail, you know, what, and those are very specific kinds of things, but they can be where we can have input if we have ideas, we've seen what other places do, etc. I mean, we're just making a suggestion, we're just advisory, so obviously we can't make the changes per se. All we can do is advise. But I guess, and back to Diane, I should have probably let her go ahead and talk about this.
I have Courtney on my team. Do you want me to bring her over here and see if maybe if I put her by the mic?
Okay, sure, if that works. When you're looking at this, when you see there were some very specific and not so specific ideas in and we tried to combine them into two areas, but I think it's a little more. Let's see what Courtney has to say.
Let me know, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Give you a bit of an echo, but I'll try to be quick. So we have a strategic plan on our website under the About Us page, which includes strategic goals and objectives. And this strategic plan connects to the healthcare's strategic initiatives, which connects to the county's strategic goals. Proposition 1 and what's taking place with that, those changes connect in other ways and will be updated in the ways that we're giving the BHAB update. I don't know if that helps, but it is tied to all of the healthcare initiatives and strategies that are underway. Over to you.
One of the things that Dr. Jennering said to us in our planning meeting, or maybe it was the executive committee meeting, was that they deal with the Medicaid patients. And we can step outside of that, look at what private insurance, what nonprofits are providing. And so I think maybe if we looked to the site visits, which are part of our charge as a BHAB, and there hasn't been a site visit done since pre-COVID because they were stopped during COVID. And I mean, I think a goal for an ad hoc committee would be to prioritize site visits and maybe prioritize those that are not county driven, but those CBOs, so we learn what they provide and who they provide it for. So when the Board of Supervisors has to make a decision next year on where they might spend money, we can say, okay, you might not have money for county prevention facilities, but there's this number of CBOs that we visited that could be the safety net for it if you provided support to that. It's just a thought if we did our site visits in a thoughtful way. And I think an ad hoc committee looking at that could look at the CBOs in the county and then maybe come up with a way. We all as members need to do site visits, but a committee could maybe decide what CBOs we visit and what are the priority places we should visit based on what's going to happen before us.
John?
So I've worked with other counties on issues like this, and other counties do an annual formal needs assessment. Has this county done a formal needs assessment?
That is what's being done now. Yes.
Okay,
So
that's
it's
what
in the
we're talking-
process.
It's not available yet.
Not yet, and I don't, Courtney's still there. I think Courtney might have, when it's gonna be available. Do you have that?
Put it in chat.
Yeah, oh yeah, Courtney, maybe you could put that in the chat and we can get it from.
It does not have that in.
Oh, she does have information. Okay, so I think it's a good question and that's why I was hoping we would get that today, but. It seems to me as it's going along, they've done all their visits, community, et cetera. I think they have all their information is my point, and so that should be coming soon. And it would be guidance on some things that are, perhaps where there are gaps, and you're right.
So I would. I would agree with you. If we got a copy of the printed out strategic plan for VCDH. Get the needs assessment, we can evaluate that rather than just throwing things out there that we have no idea if they're being addressed, need to be addressed, or what have you. I don't want this group to waste their time on something that is not going to materialize into anything. That'd be my thought anyway.
Okay, Andre?
If I'm not mistaken, I think that there was a presentation on gaps within our county system over a year ago. And one other thing that we discussed also adjacent to that point was that that maybe Dr. Dennering or somebody else from BCH could give a bigger picture overview of the continuum of care. So we can better, those of us who are not intimately involved in behavioral health can better understand. But going back to the gaps, I remember that one gap specifically was the lack of partial hospitalization program services or intensive outpatient programs. Something I'm interested in personally, but that's just one of many of the gaps that are identified. So perhaps it wouldn't be unhelpful to bring the previous gaps to share those with the committee.
Yeah, well, they brought that, they came last month or the month before and they did present. The group that's doing all this did present to us. They're sort of the beginning, I mean, not beginning, but kind of what they're seeing. They gave us an overview, which we can go back and look at, because we would all have, I'll probably still have those slide decks, so we could certainly get them. Your suggestion is a good one, and actually, that's gonna be our program for November, the presentation. That is, but thank you, but that is gonna be what we're gonna present. So we will have, I think we'll get the information on the gaps really soon, and we could certainly look at the strategic plan for the department. It is online. So people can go and review that if they want to do that. I think that's a good suggestion. And there's no reason we can't do that. Sylvia?
I had homework and I apologize for not doing it, which was getting you a more like detailed goal of what I was talking about, but on page 2, of the packet that we got where the numbers are. If you look at the Spanish speaking, you can see that there's only 16 Spanish speakers in a residential 24/7 program. And so that was one of the goals that I was wanting to look at, is trying to increase that number. And I can get you into something that's more like, well, better put together, more comprehensive. But that's something specifically that I'd be interested in working on, whether it's just becomes a BHAB goal, as a board or under a disparities ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Well, one of the things that we talked about, with the department a little bit is how we're probably losing clients. They're maybe afraid to come forward, they're, not looking for, I mean, I think there's gonna be gaps here, in what we're going to see, and that number may be one example, but I think that's gonna be a continuing issue
Well,
in this county.
if
And
you go from out for English speaking, you go from 4,600 to residential to 582. That's approximately, I'm good at math, but maybe. Or, sorry, yeah. I don't know what percentage it is, but I mean, 16 is ridiculously so for the Spanish speaking. It doesn't say if they're, it just says primary language. It doesn't say, we don't know if that's just if they also speak English. But you're right, it's gonna affect that, and if it does, I mean, what's it gonna go down to like 2? I mean, that's just so that's just something that I wanted to research, because it's already really, really low to begin with.
It
and
is,
then-
but those are self-identified, I don't know, I'm just gonna guess. You self-identify usually what your preference language is when you fill out a form of almost any kind. If they're English speaking too, that may be counted, they may not be Spanish only, but they might be. So we would need to get more information on that, I think, from the department on how that is actually measured and what, so. Feel free to write that to me and I'll go to the department and research it. Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going back to Diane's suggestion. I mean, it seems like if we're trying to set a goal that we can actually have an impact on, having an ad hoc committee that got together and came up with a plan of the site visits and who's going and the dates and coordinating, that would actually be
Yeah.
one of the biggest impacts that we could make and would be helpful to all of us. So I do second that idea if we're trying to walk away with at least one goal today or something.
I will clear that.
Okay, yeah. So there is interest in site visits, establishing an ad hoc committee that will research, decide, recommend the site visits that we can do as a group. Not all of us go at once, obviously, and maybe do some scheduling and get that going. Other comments on that, perhaps? And this doesn't have to be decided today, but it's a goal that people are interested in, and it's an attainable goal. We can even put the number of site visits that we're gonna accomplish this year, and that is attainable.
Wonderful.
Yeah, well, whatever, yeah, but it's attainable, that's something we can report out on, and I think it could be helpful.
And one of the number one strategic goal was the other one that Dr. Jennering brought up to us, which is client and community engagement. And so again, if we could talk to, prioritize the school districts maybe by size. I'm gonna be calling them, Andre, maybe a little bit, about their wellness centers, because the data notebook that we're turning in this year is all about wellness centers. But with this big budget change that we all know is coming in July of 2026, are the school districts going to be able to continue to have wellness centers? Just opening up the line of communication between us and school districts would be great. Opening up the line of communications between us and city councils would be great. They know, so that they know who to ask something of, as these changes, I think, are gonna get pretty wild. And since the number one strategic goal and objective is client and community engagement, and that's what Dr. Denner said, it would be great if BHAB could help with. Maybe there could be an ad hoc committee that could, talk to Dr. Dennering and see what that looks like. I mean, I don't need to invent it and say, well, who's gonna go do what, but a committee to figure out how can we help that community engagement as a board. Maybe it will require volunteers, maybe we can't do it all just with this number here, but at least look at it, so.
Yeah, along that line, what we talked about also with Dr. Denton was, if she would help us, or someone in the department, establish kind of, somebody even mentioned this, kind of a 1-page or some kind of a presentation that we can go out and do. To different areas, to different groups, and we can look by supervisor's district and see who's willing to go to the city councils, and that's, or however many there are in that supervisor's district, and just make this little 10-minute presentation. Most city council meetings are televised. So, and any kind of community group where there's a number of people would be interested in what we're talking about, and kind of services, etc., I think is important for us to do. So we could have an ad hoc committee on establishing that, researching, figuring out how we want to do that, and go forward. It's just another idea that we talked about with Dr. Jenner, and I asked her what would be helpful to her in the department, and that's kind of, these are the things that she talked about. And then prevention was the other one, because they're losing all funding on prevention, and that's a lot of money. Then the state is going back from every county, and it does significantly impact the budget. And it leaves holes of, who's gonna do that and how will we do it? It's an important topic, obviously.
I'm not understanding though, like, if we're trying to go back and educate the public on where the prevention funding that's going to be coming from or helping them, even though that's not gonna be like what we're gonna be concentrating in the future, is gonna be moderate to severe. It just feels like we're not going forward with the new strategic goals of the county. Do you know?
Well, letting the school districts know that the county's not gonna be providing it, but they're going to have.
Well, that was answered at, one of the community, the Oxnard community. That was here a couple weeks ago, someone asked about that. And, the person who's running it said that the schools do have a budget for that. And some of them have decided to use that budget and some of them haven't. So they do have some budget that they could use for the wellness centers.
Yeah, the wellness centers that the district is most interested in, quite honestly, are the adult wellness centers, because that's what the county actually funds and interacts with. The schools, if the school wellness centers, certainly the county has supported many of them, most of them probably, and that's crucially important. But I think what the department is looking at is the wellness centers that are geared around adults. And Turning Point, I think, has a couple, there may be others, but those might be site visits that we might want to figure out what they do, because nobody seemed to know when we brought this up before. So, okay, it sounds like we're not really ready to do this yet, which is definitely understandable, and that's perfectly okay. We did take a whole meeting last year to do this with the facilitators, so we were just trying to, sort of get it going. If there's enough interest in even what we've talked about today and the site visits and just doing an ad hoc committee on that, if there were 5 or 6 people who might be interested in that, we could go ahead and move forward with that. I mean, if not, we'll just put that on as a suggestion and we'll continue this next month. We don't have to do this today. Michael?
So would this be in lieu of crisis and K? I just want to make sure I'm like on the same page, that's all.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, that's why we brought up crisis, and I want to make sure people understood that there was, and you were crisis, and so if you want to talk a little bit about your committing that a few times anyway, that'd be great.
So, and when we're talking about crisis, we're looking at a variety of different areas. One was, in terms of psychiatric hospitalization, such as Helmont or just Del Mar, as far as both admission as well and discharge and discharge capacity issues regarding that, and how much does the county need, looking at that, but I know there's a needs assessment, but just kind of looking at that. But the bigger thing is with respect to that, we were looking at step down, it's like, what is it, where are the step down opportunities for someone to kind of reduce revolving doors, and the same was with jails. Revolving doors of Helmont hospitalizations and Ventura County Jail. So we're looking at warm handoffs and discharge planning. And then as well as looking at veterans issues, as James is on the issue, was on the subcommittee or the ad hoc committee at the time. So that was something that was very important to him. So I wanted to, we were going to continue with that with this ad hoc committee, was continue that work as well. So off the top of my head, that's it. I have to look at notes to get more details, but that was where we're looking at it, but also looking at it through the lens of language access and cultural competency as well. Because that impacted as far as, what kind of crisis response, and I'm still going to talk about this in the past, as far as making sure that we have people who are who have the linguistic skills to engage with those who are in places.
Yeah, and I think the addition to that, if we were to continue it, is the new look is, okay, so it's probably funded through this year, but then this is one of the areas that I think the department may be having to make some cuts. And so if we're thinking that might be where crisis services might be where some of the cuts may have to be made, or have to be changed, or there may have to be they're just redone maybe, but they won't maybe be the same as they are now. And I think that's the kind of lens, whatever we pick, we need to look at. If that's gonna have to change, what else could be done in the community, where else could we get those services, what else could happen? One suggestion that I know was made several times to the people who are doing the needs assessment right now. They shared with me a couple of things, and one of them was that about behavioral health or psychological, whatever, what comes from behavioral health people going on to with the officers on some of these calls. And what's the interaction, how can we better do that now? We're gonna have to cut back services. That's what I think Matt was saying, though, if we think that's really important, we go into it, we delve into it, we decide this is something we want to recommend. Then that's when the Board of Supervisors has a chance to look at and say, well, maybe we need to fund this and not this. I mean, that's where I think we can make recommendations this year. That's what he was saying, because in the past, it's always been kind of passed along pretty much the same as always, but this is gonna be totally different. So we have a chance to say to them, we think this is what should be continued to be funded, or new funding or whatever. But, we have a chance to do that. That is real input to what their decision is.
And I believe the site visits kind of help inform that as well.
Exactly. And the other was TAY services, and that really, I think you were only looking at site visits at that point and nothing beyond that, so that sort of never gelled beyond that, so. So we can continue those if that's what people feel we really want to delve into. That's perfectly acceptable. The commitment by the board is basically each person serves on an ad hoc committee, and then that they meet hopefully once a month, could be more often, could be less, could be divided up into, you're gonna research this and you're gonna research this and come back and we're gonna talk about it. I mean, it can be done in all different kinds of ways, but it's done at that ad hoc committee level, and then it comes back to the full board. All right, so do people we'll get a little more information that we've talked about. You can look at the department strategic plan online.
Under about Ventura County Behavioral Health. And it has the strategic 2021 to 2026 strategic plan, noting that even they knew enough to stop it at the end of 2026 because we don't know.
We don't know, yeah. But it's helpful to probably look at it and, yeah. Okay, so why don't we do this? We'll write down a few ideas of things. And then the executive committee can work on that, bring it back, so we're not just starting from nothing again. And then we'll make this an agenda item for next month. I mean, there's no hurry, we can do this at any point, because our goal is to just have something by July. So we have plenty of time to work on this. They're not, ad hoc committees are not supposed to be long in length anyway, so we'll be fitting right in with what the definition is pretty much. Okay, and feel free to contact either Diane or I if you have additional ideas or things you want to make sure get put on the list, or just ideas pop into your head. You want to just say, hey, let's talk about this. It could be anything. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to be well researched it yourself, just put it out there. It's okay. All right, I want to move on to new business so we get out of here on time. So procedures and protocol, we talked about this before, we do need to make an ad hoc committee, we have a couple of people volunteered, and that's all, that's okay, we'll do it with them. But just the things like, for example, this orientation of new board members, that would have been something that would have come out of this committee. As a procedure that we haven't had how to do that, and now we're developing one. We're doing it as a whole board, so it turns out it doesn't matter, it's just a good example of what the kind of things that we're gonna put into that procedures committee. So if there's anybody else who wants to be on that ad hoc committee, let me know. We did have some suggestions from when we did the bylaws and things. And hopefully Michael still has those. Do you still have those?
What?
The suggestions for, we used to, when we went through the bylaws, we'd say, oh, that should be in procedures, or that should be in the bylaws. Do you have anything on that?
I would have to look at my notes.
Okay, you're such a good note taker. I bet you do. Otherwise, maybe Janice does, and I can contact you if you don't have anything. Okay.
I
Okay,
think what it would be some of the things that we deleted from the bylaws that we said, this should be
over there, so I can
Okay,
look
Yeah.
at my notes.
great, okay, perfect. Okay, and then, future presentation requests, we are keeping a list of those, Selena's keeping a list of those, and we are doing next month. Andre's suggestion, which we'll get to where he's, and I wrote it down, the exact time.
It's like the organizational.
Yeah, I wrote it down somewhere. But the clarification of differences between various behavioral health levels of care. Is that?
Yeah, that's
I
accurate.
think we can pretty much get at what you were thinking about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, great. So that will be our presentation next month. And then we will be hearing
No.
from Gold Coast. I'm not sure about December, but you and I can talk about that. Okay, great. Okay, contracts. Unfortunately, we don't have staff members here, but if we have any questions, we can get back to you. Does anybody have any questions on the contracts? Important is that
I didn't, I leave it up to Eric on mine, so whatever.
Okay, I have one too, but I can write it. Okay, if you have any questions on any of the contracts, let us know. We'll get it to the department, get the answers back, because we don't have the record here. And we do have, okay, the orientation of the new board members will be put on the next agenda. Remember, that is getting one person from each supervisor's district to be the orienter, and this only comes up occasionally, because it's not like you have constant turnover, constant new members, so it's not a big commitment, but interesting during the break. Did you bring the binders by any chance?
No, they're up.
Okay, some of you still have not gotten your binders, Sylvia. And, oh, good, okay, so we do have them for every board member, so we will again bring them next month and try to get you to take them home, because it's a good resource, and especially if you're orienting people, you should have this to share with them, share new things. Okay, public comments, do we have any other public comments? Lost everything. Yeah, I don't think so. Anything else anybody needs to say? Yeah, Michael.
Just a quick one, do we know when the bylaws is gonna be agendized for the board of supervisors?
It's a good question. I meant to ask Loretta and I forgot. No,
Okay,
and Matt left, so.
So there are only 2 meetings left this year. One is the 18th of November. And then the next one is going to be middle of December. So we're just getting items for the 18th right today, literally today.
Oh, do you submit that or just Loretta? The bylaws changes that we will.
I don't do the submitting, they submit a group of which I am one.
Okay.
And so I haven't even had a chance to look at everything that's been submitted.
Okay, so we need to find out who would be the person who would pass those on.
I can ask.
Okay.
I can, and I will make sure that you,
Okay.
that you hear and Michael hears.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Anything else? Everybody? Okay, all right, we got out on time. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next month, and it's on November the. November 17th. Okay. Okay, that's the way. Okay, thank you. Thanks for all your comments. Thank you.